In today's show, is the Trailblazers roster finished? Or are there more moves to be made? And what's even the holdup? Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making the show your first listen. Coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make your first listen and tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, we're going to talk about the Blazers roster. Is this thing finished? Maybe. What are the holdups? Kind of revisit some talking points I shared at the beginning of Summer League. Now that we've come to the end, if none of them have come to fruition, what are the dominoes that still need to fall for the Blazers to make moves? Is this roster finished? And in the second segment, I want to share an interesting email I got from listener Ted about time as a commodity and how the Blazers are maybe misusing or actively using that commodity. We'll talk about that in the second segment. And then I want to talk about some things I got wrong and how my getting those things wrong has informed some opinions that I have now. It's good to be wrong, folks. Don't shy away from when you get stuff incorrect. It's how you learn. Okay, let's talk about the holdup. I mentioned in the beginning of Summer League that, the Blazers there was some traction with them potentially trading Jeremy Grant to the Lakers and maybe some other teams would get involved. And the market didn't seem to be super frothy, but certainly the Blazers were entertaining ideas for trading Jeremy Grant. And the holdup in some ways was going to be that if you're looking for a big scoring guard, there were two other better big scoring guards available on the market in Lauri Markkanen as well as Brandon Ingram in New Orleans. So then it became, the sort of logic was that if teams were going to chase those two guys, then maybe their backup option or their sort of alternate route, or perhaps even in multi-team deals, that Jeremy Grant would be a target for other folks, right? And it seems pretty clear when I was reporting this, it's like the Lakers and Blazers, certainly they could get a deal done, but it's not super duper simple because the Lakers just don't have enough juice to trade. And if they do add all of the things they have to trade, then they're overpaying. And so then, when both sides, when it's either an overpay or underpay clearly on either side, hard to get a deal done. But the Lauri Markkanen and Brandon Ingram thing, the logic was heading into Summer League, well, the whole NBA is going to Vegas. Everyone's going to get there. You get all these in-person conversations, not just the team and executives in person, but all the agents in person, agents talking to teams. It's the wheeling and the dealing and the moving and the shaking, the backroom deals, the front room deals, the side room deals, the courtside deals, all of it right there could happen in Vegas. And here's the thing, nothing happened. Nothing happened. That's how this ended, is that nothing really happens. But there's been some reporting along the way, including a bunch of really good reporting from Mark Stein of the Stein Line, a essential reporting on Substack. I really like the work that Mark Stein does. I really like the work that Jake Fisher does. I know many of you probably prefer the news-breaking exploits of the big newsbreakers at ESPN and The Athletic. Sure, those guys get stuff right, capital R right. But Stein and Fisher do what I really like, which is report along the way, give you the breadcrumbs. Here's what we're hearing. Here's how things may go down. Here's some conversations that have clearly happened. I can report clearly on those things that have happened. And okay, it went another direction. But I like the piecemeal stuff. I like the honest reporting of here is what I've heard and here's the logic behind it. And I think Stein is the best at it in the game, and Jake Fisher at Yahoo Sports is really excellent at it too. I know they quote unquote get stuff wrong, and it's because they don't just wait until to the finish line to report. Reporting at mile 12 of the marathon is just fine with me. But Stein reported in the middle of July, it's about 10 days ago now, that one of the holdups for a Brandon Ingram trade coming out of New Orleans was that his camp is looking for a place where he could be traded to where they would give him a max contract, or at least a fat contract extension, because it's pretty clear that New Orleans has real financial challenges with trying to pay Trey Murphy and trying to pay eventually Herb Jones, and trying to take care of everybody along with CJ McCollum and Zion Williamson, and aren't interested in giving max money to Brandon Ingram. He's probably not that level of player, but he's a pretty darn good player. He's big and could help a lot of teams. He's not my maybe my preferred style of dude. I don't really care for his game aesthetically, but like I can't deny that he can be pretty helpful when he is on. But max money is max money, and in the new confines and a team like New Orleans that basically won't pay the tax, it gets a little bit tricky. So Brandon Ingram's camp is looking for like, hey, is there a spot he could get traded to and he would re-sign? This has shades of Pascal Siakam last year, who was basically like, hey, Atlanta, don't trade for me. Do not trade for me because I don't want to be there. Like I don't want to play for your team and I won't re-sign there. Sending those kind of threats. Sacramento Kings, do not trade for me. I won't re-sign there. What happened was they got into the season and Pascal Siakam found a place that he could, was comfortable re-signing, ends up in Indiana, but they're pretty darn good there. The right role, the right money, bang, bang, boom, he signs a fat contract. Maybe that's the path Brandon Ingram goes. On the other side, some more reporting from Stein more recently in the last couple of days over at the Stein Line. Subscribe to the Substack, be in your inbox like it's in mine. Is that there is certainly some mild traction between Lauri Markkanen and Lauri Markkanen getting traded from the Jazz to the Warriors. According to Stein, it is believed, although it's hard to pin down exactly what Utah wants to do, but it's believed that their interest is in Brandon Podziemski, Pods. They don't have as much interest in Jonathan Kuminga, and right now the offer from Golden State has really centered around Moses Moody and draft capital, and that doesn't appeal to the Jazz. Markkanen is in a weird situation because he can sign a contract extension starting on August 6th. If he signs a contract extension on August 6th with the Jazz, he can be traded exactly one day during the year, February 6th, which is the deadline in 2025. If he doesn't sign an extension, he can be traded in perpetuity, and if he signs an extension anytime after August 6th, he cannot be traded during the upcoming season. So he has a weird kind of deadline thing. Can Golden State figure out a way over the next 15 days or so? You're listening to Tuesday, July 23rd's program. I appreciate you listening. So whatever that is, 8 days, 50, basically 2 weeks, 15 days or so, 17 days. Can they get a deal done by then? Maybe they want to hold on to Pods because he fits and he's better. Apparently Golden State's more interested in trading Jonathan Kuminga or Moses Moody. Can they get a deal done? What does it look like? All of those things. And that's getting in the way of the Jeremy Grant stuff, because if you're still, maybe Golden State pivots, or maybe other teams that are hoping to be absorb here, give and take moves like that, maybe they're waiting. I don't think Brandon Ingram has much impact necessarily on the Jeremy Grant situation, but certainly if you're a team holding your cards to say, let's figure out if we can find a deal to get Brandon Ingram here and to sign him, that probably has more appeal to most teams than Jeremy Grant. They're different players. I think JG can slide in better as a role player with some of his skills than Brandon Ingram can, but like different teams have different needs, right? So maybe you need the buckets. Maybe you need the mid-range shooting. So the dominoes that were there in July that I talked about 3 weeks ago in the program, like, oh, well, maybe the Lauri Markkanen stuff and the Brandon Ingram stuff, those will get taken care of, and that will kind of knock things down and allow for the Blazers to kind of get in there with their secondary stuff, right? Their secondary stuff is like, okay, well, we have this. Do you need a scoring forward? We've got one of those. Like, it just never came to fruition. Those things are still held up. And so it doesn't seem like that Jeremy Grant trade, which, maybe things, obviously things come out of nowhere, but like if I think the logic, it's fair to follow the logic to say maybe those things were kind of in the way and they still remain in the way, which means the Blazers will wait because they can wait. Or can they? I got an email from a listener, Ted, and listener Ted sent me an email that says the Blazers are misunderstanding time as a commodity. While they might be understanding the other commodities and the other value in trade negotiations in the contract game, they are misvaluing time as a commodity. Let's talk about that. I think it is a really interesting point talking about the Blazers and team building and whether patience is virtuous or not. Let's talk about that in the second segment. Join me there, won't ya? First, though, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors, and there's 3 words you need to know. It's passion, it's drive, and it's patience. It's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Whether that's superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts to choose from for your number one ride or die, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right. So I got an email address, lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com, and people send me interesting queries and questions and thoughts and all of those things. And also some people send me trade ideas, which don't fall in that category whatsoever. But I got an interesting email from listener Ted, who made the argument that Joe Cronin, in regards to this Jeremy Grant saga, is not appreciating that time in and of itself is a commodity. That he is not appreciating the most valuable commodity that there is, which is time. And Ted argues in this email Ted sent that while the Blazers may, by waiting till February to trade Jeremy Grant, which looks like the direction we're headed, right? Hence the whole first segment, at least the trade deadline being February, but into the season, waiting till February to trade Jeremy Grant, while it might net a better return in theory, what it does is that it doesn't recognize that time itself is a commodity. And what Ted argues is they're wasting valuable developmental minutes by having Jeremy Grant on the roster, a player who's not part of the long-term plan and in the way of a stable of young forwards who are potentially part of the plan, but certainly much more likely to be part of the next good Blazers team than Jeremy Grant. I think it's an interesting argument. I would say on its face, I don't really agree, but that's, I think, the beauty of why I like the emails, because like you have a little more space to be more thoughtful. And for me, hearing arguments, particularly rational and thoughtful and sort of well detailed arguments that I don't agree with, it's a really helpful way to get my sort of thoughts around where I'm at with this team. So I think Ted has a rational point here. Jeremy Grant is, he's the oldest player in the roster currently. He is going to start at power forward. He's going to play 32 plus minutes a night every night. And those minutes could be going to younger players such as Toumani Camara and Denny Avdia because like Denny's going to start and then Toumani's going to come off the bench. Jabari Walker is probably out of the rotation as is because of the way the roster is going to work. Obviously, Chris Murray and Ryan Rupert are deep down the bench. They're like in the 12, 13, 14 range. And not having Jeremy Grant block those guys wastes, I'm using a Ted word here, 50 games of valuable developmental opportunities that you don't get back. The contracts run out, guys get older, the years go on, like you do not get that developmental time back. You only have brief period to use the commodity of time and if you do not, you have wasted it, you have spent it. I think it's a logical argument from Ted. I would argue that Joe Cronin does understand the commodity of time. In fact, I think he deeply understands commoditizing patience. He's selling it back to you. The messaging from Joe Cronin over the last 12 months has shifted from we hope to be really good. Scoot Henderson is not a typical 19-year-old, blah, 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 to it's going to take us some time. We're not where we want to be, and we're not going to probably be competitive until our young guys get good. It has shifted from we think we're going to be this, we think we could be special, we're not putting a cap on what we're going to be, to we have to be patient because it's what we need to do, and we're just not going to be there until our young guys get there, and that's the truth. And I think honestly, the last time Joe Cronin spoke to the media was probably as honest as he's been post that was right at the end of the season. I thought that wasn't the most recent time he spoke after that. But like after the season, that's as honest as he's been. It's like, we're just not there yet, and we're not going to be there until we get there. I think he was pretty straightforward. He's not, sometimes he's in the past, and when he's spoken to the media, he's been very clear about a direction, but he's in hindsight, it's like, that dude wasn't telling the truth. That guy was lying. I think this is much as honest as he's been in terms of like his rhetoric meeting what I believe to be the reality of the team, as opposed to, we're anxious to build around Damian Lillard. No, you weren't. Joe Cronin is utilizing time as a commodity. He is preaching patience as praxis. Patience as praxis. Because he knows that the commodity the Blazers do actually have, and what he's selling to you is what the Blazers do actually have is the commodity they are in control of is time, because they don't have urgency. Other teams have urgency. The Blazers are young. Their young players aren't under, even throw DeAndre Ayton multi-seasons, Anthony Simons multi-seasons, Jeremy Grant multi-seasons, much less the guys on rookie contracts like Scoot and Shaedon Sharpe and Donovan Clingan and Jabari Walker. Like, it's like, even those guys, they'll be restricted free agents. The Blazers will get to make decisions on them on their own. They won't even have the value of like true agency and when they hit free agency, right? The Blazers will get to determine their future for the most part. Cronin knows that, and he is using that his approach to saying we have to be patient as that, saying I am maximizing the commodity of time. Time as a commodity, I'm maximizing it because I won't take a bad deal. I'm going to be as patient as possible. I know we can be as patient as possible. Right now, if we lose games, that's totally fine and maybe even good, because the NBA incentivizes losing. And if I rush to make a bad deal, it is worse than being patient and trying to find a good one. Now, you could argue that he was pretty patient with Malcolm Brogdon and didn't get a ton of value in return for him. I like Deni Avdija a lot, but like standalone value for Malcolm Brogdon, I don't think the Blazers got a lot of value for him. They got value. They got Deni Avdija by trading a couple first round picks, and Malcolm's money made it work, right? That might end up being a kick-ass deal for the Blazers, but it wasn't a Hall special return for Malcolm Brogdon. I think that the real truth, as it always is, lies in the middle of Ted's approach, or Ted's preference for speeding this thing up and trading the veterans and saying let's go, versus Joe Cronin's approach, which is like, as long as I'm patient, I can, I think there's twofold to it. One, it's Cronin is being patient because it's the practical thing to do. And two, waiting as long as you possibly can to say this team is trying to win is really good for job security. It's really good. Never putting any emphasis on W's will always make the L's softer. The truth is in the middle, probably. I think with NBA trades, it's better to be a little bit early than a little bit late, because a little bit late you get nothing, and a little bit early you get not as much. But like, I think you'd rather be a little bit early than a little bit late with trades. That's probably more true with stars, right? Like, it's probably more true with, like, if the Blazers were going to like maximize a return for Damian Lillard, trading him before he asks out is the move. But that's like sort of like cold business approach to team building than like the reality of humans and emotions and all of those things, right? But I think I'm probably not all the way there with Ted in terms of like, this is the Blazers ignoring that the commodity, that time as a commodity. And I'm probably not all the way on board with Joe Cronin's approach of like hyper patience and being slow in the transaction game. My preference is probably somewhere in the middle. I probably lean a little bit more towards Cronin than Ted on like the sort of patience spectrum, but not much. I'm probably right smack dab in the middle. I would prefer the Blazers have been more aggressive at the previous trade deadline. I'm surprised they haven't been more active and able to trade players. Some of that is sometimes you can't. It takes two to tango. If you get bad deals, you get bad deals. But I would say, again, there's a point where patience is no longer a virtue and has diminishing returns. And are the Blazers will the Blazers, if they continue to demand themselves to be as patient as possible, right? Do they get up into diminishing returns with multiple assets? And then you feel like, Was hitting a bunch of B pluses as opposed to swinging for something a little higher? Like, was that better? We'll see. I think the Denny Avdia trade, if it pays off, it's gonna feel real good. You're gonna feel like, okay, that's really a good deal. No complaints there. So, I think this is an interesting one. I think Ted has a really good point here, and I think juxtaposed with sort of what I think Cronin has been selling publicly, it's an interesting kind of. I don't think either approach is necessarily wrong. I think that it is maybe the two poles of how to approach where the Blazers are. Where the heck are they? And why didn't they do anything? And why did I get it so wrong? I don't know that I got it so wrong, but I was wrong. I made a pretty bold prediction 3 weeks ago. It hasn't come to fruition. Let's talk about what I got wrong and learning from it in the final segment. Like, let's answer the question. Are the Blazers freaking done making moves? Join me in that third segment, won't you? First, though, I want to tell you about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book and the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. I'm recording this on Monday evening. I just finished watching my beloved Rockies win in 12 innings against the Boston Red Sox. Let's go. The Red Sox fans can fill up Coors Field, and those sad sack Rockies will still get a dub. Could have won some money. The Rocks weren't favored, and that's what FanDuel's doing all summer long. They're giving you action on Major League Baseball. We are going to get a whole slate of Olympics coming up next week. It's here. Whole bunch of events, and all summer long, FanDuel is hooking up all customers. That's new customers, returning customers, anybody with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com. Start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel. It's an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. Okay. So, 3 weeks ago, I sat right here in this chair. I sat in this chair a lot of nights, 25 nights a month, but I sat 3 weeks ago. I sat right in this chair. And I kind of walked through, okay, we're post-drafts, everybody's going to Vegas, the wheels are going to start humming, the Blazers can't really stand pat and like run the same group back next year. And I made a bold prediction. I said in the next 3 weeks, Anthony Simons is going to get traded. I kind of didn't really believe the Jeremy Grant stuff with the Lakers, and we'll like kind of see what his deal is. And I don't think there's crazy urgency necessarily to trade Jeremy Grant. I'm not Ted. I don't desperately need to see Jabari Walker play a whole bunch of minutes, but I get that logic. I totally do. And also, like, you're going to trade Jeremy Grant back for players. Some other players are going to get squeezed somewhere. You're just going to, when you're sort of flat as the Blazers are talent wise, it's not going to be a clear hierarchy of who's going to play. You're going to have some players that you want to see that are stuck behind players that you maybe don't. But I sat here and I said Anthony Simons is going to get traded in the next 3 weeks. And that was reading the tea leaves, the way Anthony Simons spoke at the end of his end of season press conference, the way that Joe Cronin has been not super into mentioning Anthony Simons by name when talking about the future of the franchise. When he talked about all the positives that came out of the season, even during a rough season, Anthony Simons name didn't come up. When he talked about the future of the franchise, he mentioned Shaden. We're going to maximize Shaden Sharp and Scoot Henderson. Anthony Simons is 25 years old. Not going to maximize him. Ooh boy. And it just seemed like the tea leaves were there, right? It just seemed like that. And maybe that'll be the case. But I was wrong about that, right? Like, we're hitting the 3 week mark. I was wrong. It didn't happen in the next 3 weeks. I am maybe more inclined to admit when I was wrong than other people who have a YouTube talking head type show. But I think it's interesting to learn from your mistakes. It's much more interesting to learn from when you got stuff wrong than it is to toot the I told you so horn. I prefer to have my mistakes out in the open and tell you like, I got this wrong. Here, I wonder why, and try to go from there. I think this is pretty obvious. There's no real market for Anthony Simons' archetype. People aren't jumping at combo guards who aren't quite point guards who can't defend. Ask the freaking Miami Heat. They got two of them now because they got Terry Rozier. But like, there just isn't a robust market for that type of player. It might be speaking to the sort of market for Malcolm Brogdon, who is good and useful and does a lot of things, but he's probably not like a true pure point guard. He's a bucket, right? That's Malcolm Brogdon's best skill. And while he's a competent defender, certainly much better than Anthony Simons, it's like he just combo guards who could score. It's like there's a slim interest in them out in the marketplace, period. That's probably impacting Anthony Simons too. I think the Blazers want to get a good deal for Anthony Simons when they do trade him. Certainly, I think it's abundantly clear they don't view him as part of their long-term plan. If they did, the GM just would have mentioned his name. It's pretty simple, but just mentioned his name at some point, would have said, Anthony Simons is good and we're glad to have him on the team. At any point, he could have done that. But he didn't. They didn't. That's not the way they went. So I think the market and the Blazers' preference for patience and the fact that the Blazers kind of need guards. So if you're going to trade Anthony Simons, they're just kind of a little light on guards. Like, I don't think you want Delano Banton to be an every night player in an NBA team. I just, maybe you do. I don't think it is. That would be a responsible thing. I think he's too inefficient and not enough passer and all these things. But at some point it doesn't really matter because the Blazers are trying to lose. So if I was wrong about Ant and the Jeremy Grant market seems to be on hold behind some other dominoes, this might be it. At this point, I will amend my trade take and say, like, here we are. I'm recording this like 11 p.m. on Monday, July 22nd. I'd be pretty surprised if the Blazers team they have, with all 15 players under contracts, partially guaranteed deal for Delano Banton, but everyone else under fully guaranteed contract, I'd be pretty surprised if this isn't the group they start the season with. Now, I would be stunned if it is the group they end the season with, but I'd be pretty surprised if this isn't the group they start the season with. That said, I'll offer this counterpoint to the counterpoint, as long as we're bringing all the data points out here. The last 2 years, there's been big trades in August. Donovan Mitchell getting traded to the Cavs kind of out of nowhere. Obviously, there was a whole long saga with him going to the Knicks. And then Damian Lillard getting traded to the Bucks. And there was a whole long saga with him going to the Heat. We're not in that like disgruntled minor hostage situation superstar summer. That's not really what this is. It's not really what I think Brandon Ingram was like, yeah, I'll go back and play for the Pels. It's cool. And all of the reports coming out of Salt Lake City is that Lauri Markkanen likes Utah, and the Jazz probably like Lauri Markkanen. It's just they're like, what are we doing? How good can we be? And if we get another cajillion draft picks and some young players, like maybe just kicking it down the road even further with our incredible wealth of draft capital is actually the best move. I think neither of those situations are disgruntled, right? So it's not the same as the last two summers, but certainly there could be action. Like, I don't think it's out of the question. I think like Lauri Markkanen might make it 3 straight summers when a player with all-star caliber talent, obviously he's a lower level than Mitchell and Dame, but like he's very good and very helpful. But like it gets traded in August. I think certainly that is on the table. Whether the Blazers find their way into that, like whether they kind of like, end up in a multi-team deal and trade one of their vets, be it, surprisingly DeAndre Ayton or whatever it might be. Like if they, there's certainly a world where that exists. But at this point, I would be pretty surprised if the Blazers 15 players that are on the roster today aren't on the roster when the season starts, plus whoever they add as the third two-way guy. They're going to make deals. But as I mentioned in the second segment, this one's building on itself. I planned it out. If it's really patience as praxis, if this is really the sort of the Cronin way, it's that you have to make deals. But Cronin won't make the deal at the deadline you think he should. At the trade deadline, he basically did nothing. That was weird. In the summer, he made one deal before draft night and then trade away some second round picks on draft night, but he didn't make any bigger splash moves. So you think like, he was a move behind on Brogdon heading into the trade deadline, or like a cycle behind on Brogdon. He's a cycle behind on Anthony Simons and Jeremy Grant. Seems pretty clear that following that, they're very likely to explore, if not complete, trades for those guys in the season. They can start the year right now with Grant and Anthony Simons on the roster, and in my opinion, it's not that big of a deal. It's fine. There's plenty of guard minutes to go around for Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson. It's a weird fit with Scoot and Anthony Simons, but it's not minutes in the way. And really what you're talking about for Jeremy Grant is like Jabari Walker gets squeezed out of the rotation if Jeremy Grant is on the team. If that is and like you get less minutes with Tumani and Denny together. And if that's a deal breaker for you, like it sounds like it's frustrating for listener Ted, then so be it. But I think this is the group. I think we've come to the end of July. The team has left Vegas. They're back home. Guys are going to go on vacation. They're going to come back and get right. And then this thing will get jumping again in September. But like, I think this is the group. And I probably misread the urgency with which this team would operate. And I've probably done that a couple times now. And I think Ted's email helped me remember that like my anxiousness for them to do something and the sense of urgency I believe they should have is not the one they hold. They think their greatest commodity is time, and not that they are misusing the great commodity of time. That's going to do it for today's show. Come back for tomorrow's program is what we do 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, also on YouTube. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.